his name began to appear in places like the Balkans, in Eritrea, in Kashmir, in Mindanao. Not that he was in control of what was going on there, but that he was providing everything from inspiration on audio cassettes to false documents to some money to training. And so we really took notice of him by the middle 90s. And he also moved from Afghanistan to Khartoum. And Khartoum, Sudan at the time, was ruled by an Islamic party under Hassan Turabi, and was attracting a lot of radical groups into the Sudan. And so it was in Sudan, really, that we began to focus on him. The reason we set up a unit was primarily because President Clinton's National Security Advisor, Mr. Lake, was fascinated with the idea of terrorism finances. He believed that if you could cut off the finances, you would stop terrorism. He didn't really believe that religion had anything to do with it. And so at his instigation, we set up a unit to chase bin Laden specifically in November, December 1995.
And at what point did you realize that he had crossed a line and was more than just a disturbance on your radar, but actually somebody who posed a threat to the United States?
By the end of 1999, sir, we worked hard and we were lucky. They very often go together. By the end of 96, we had been in existence for a year, and we had developed a corpus of information that indicated he was much more than one more Saudi spendthrift who was out there doling out money, that he was a hands-on person who had a plan and had an organization that was far larger than anything we had ever seen by another terrorist group. And we had the very good fortune of having a former member of his organization walk into us in Africa. And it was a man who had embezzled money from Al-Qaeda. And he had gone to bin Laden and said, "I've done this." And bin Laden said, "Fine, return the money, all is forgiven." Well, he had spent the money. And so he came into us looking for protection. But the very interesting part was he basically gave us information that corroborated what we had collected over the last year and a half. And so by the end of 96, we knew a couple of things. First, bin Laden was not a Saudi ne'er-do-well. He was a hands-on, smart operator who had a long-term plan. He had an organization that was spread over at least 4 continents, including North America. And he had the desire to attack the United States. And probably most troublingly, in December 96, we found out he had organized a unit in 1992 made up of hard scientists, technicians, and engineers to try to acquire a nuclear weapon. So by the end of 96, we were very certain that this was a brand new phenomenon.
2 questions come up. One is you mentioned that you had worked on the unit supporting the Afghan Mujahideen.
Yes.
And the question arises in the literature, did we create bin Laden and then he struck back at us after he had been our creation? Or is it much more complicated? And your new book would suggest that he arises out of forces in the Muslim world and is much more than having begun as our agent.
Yeah, he never was our agent. Yeah. Not because we didn't want to talk to him or contacted him, because he wouldn't deal with us. But I think it's a case of extreme American arrogance to say that we created this phenomenon. The story of the Afghan Covert Action Program to support the Mujahideen is basically that we allowed the Afghans to kill Soviets with AK-47s instead of Lee Enfield rifles. The glory of that victory doesn't go to the Americans at all. It goes to the Afghans. But the whole concept that we created bin Laden really is another one of those blind spots that America has when it comes to trying to understand the influence of religion in the Muslim world. Bin Laden is a emanation of the sort of awakening in Sunni Islam that came after the defeat of the Soviets in Afghanistan. Allah delivered to Muslim people a victory over one of the world's 2 great superpowers. We also have a tendency to think that he is only credible if we talk about him. President Clinton, for example, went 18 months and never said bin Laden. Mr. Bush did about the same thing. And that, to me, is also an arrogance. Bin Laden is credible in the Muslim world because he's defied the Americans for a dozen years, and is still alive, has hurt us, has become something of a Robin Hood, an heir to billions who chose to drink Afghan water for 25 years and was wounded in combat 4 times. So I think we do ourselves a great disservice to believe that we are his creator. He's much more dangerous than anything we could possibly be responsible for.
And you feel strongly that President Clinton missed many opportunities to both kill him or capture him. I think 8 times that.
10 times, sir.
10 times,
yeah. And I should be very clear. A bureaucrat like myself is never going to make the decision to pull the trigger on anyone. But when President Clinton says he took every opportunity he had to kill bin Laden, that's clearly not the case. He had 2 chances to try to capture him using CIA assets, and 8 different chances that I'm aware of to kill him using U.S. military air power. And in the space of 1 year, May 98 to May 99. But if I can add, the one discouraging part of my career, and I had a great career, was to find that presidents of either party are very often not prone to protect Americans first. They're worried about what will the Europeans say about me, what will the Muslim world say. Mr. Bush is no less responsible than Mr. Clinton in that regard. He had a chance to kill Osama bin Laden or capture him at Tora Bora in 2001, and they were afraid to take American casualties, so they didn't do it. He could have killed Abu Musab Zarqawi every day for a year before the invasion of Iraq, and he didn't do it. So I think one thing that should be a very great concern to Americans in this presidential year is that they're electing presidents who don't put the security of our country, of our children, first.
And a major thrust of your book is the blinders, the myopia, together with arrogance of our foreign policy elites as they confront the problems that arise from terrorism and from a leader like Osama bin Laden.
Sir, this war is what this war is about is the impact of American intervention in the Muslim world. Now it's up to Americans to decide whether that's in our interest or not, but it's not a question for the enemy. What motivates the enemy, Osama bin Laden and his allies, is what we do in the Islamic world, not who we are, not how we live, not what we believe. None of the stuff that forms our society would form theirs if they ran a country. But they're not blowing themselves up because we have women in the workplace. They're blowing themselves up because we are on, take your pick, the Arabian Peninsula, because we support the Russians in Chechnya, because we're in Iraq and Afghanistan, or because, probably most importantly, we have supported police states in the Arab world for the last 50 years.
And you add to that the support of Israel,
yes,
and also our dependence on energy.
Well, surely America doesn't have a chance to do anything in the Middle East as long as we're dependent on energy. Yeah. We are stuck. We are going to be the champions of tyranny in the Middle East, whether it's Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, as long as we are dependent on foreign oil, and we're backing both sides in the Arab-Israeli conflict. We are the main sponsor of both antagonists, the Saudis and the Israelis. It's a rather absurd position to be in.
Mm-hmm. So you're telling us in your book that there are structural reasons. We have a real problem with the Middle East, unless and we have to recognize the real discontent that emerges from our policies on the one hand. But you're also suggesting that our elites are caught in a time warp in some sense.
Yes.
That they have modes of responding that come out of the Cold War.
Yes.
For example, their sense of time. Oh, we don't have to deal with this problem now. We can take care of it later.
Yes. I think that's very much the case, sir. We do a lot of talking about the Cold War being over and we need to think out of the box. Well, my argument would be that the Cold War was an out-of-the-box experience.